Welcome to episode number 4 of the Art of Move podcast. My name is Anthony Manuel. I'm here with Dr. William Raybar. We are in the Canadian Rockies, bringing you information about the human body and its natural movements. The sort of goal here is to kind of create a grand unified theory of the human body, biomechanics, how you should train and move. And we've covered quite a bit of ground in the last few episodes. We set out 2 episodes ago to go joint by joint and talk about joint function, and ended up talking about a lot of different systems. So just to recap for those who are just joining today, the last 2 episodes, we started from the foot, and we kind of discussed the foot as a pivot system, right? As a place where you pivot. A lot of the gait cycle, the current model of a gait cycle is this idea that you strike your heel down and you go from heel to toe and it goes forward. And we kind of talked about, go kind of pivoting around on the outside edge of your foot as the first part of a pivoting mechanism. And as we go up the chain, that pivot is sort of contingent on the positioning of your ankle, the positioning of your knee, the positioning of your hip. And we went over how the leg sort of bows when you kind of turn outward, when you properly set your gait. That what we ended up doing, what we ended up realizing is that we were trying to go joint by joint and give joint function, but that has its own limitations, because if you only look at the individual structures, you're not looking at it in the context of the actual proper biomechanical movement. One of the distinctions that Will makes that I really like is, rather than looking at the individual components and the quote science of these isolated body parts, you look at slow motion video and you look at actual human movements, and you look at the people who are never getting injured, who are moving with incredible efficiency, and you break down the patterns. So even though we were trying to go joint by joint, what we ended up doing is we ended up looking at the specific patterns and what the joints are doing within the context of those patterns. So we're still kind of going joint by joint, but we're really defining the sort of structural positions, the patterning that it's supposed to do. And we're challenging a current model of gait cycle. The last episode was almost exclusively dedicated to the idea of the spinal engine. So challenging the idea that the core is a stable structure that is propelled forward by power and locomotion through the legs only. And we kind of shifted the idea to movement through the spine is the engine and the principal driver of forward locomotion, of forward movement. So we're challenging current models that are based on isolating body parts as, and looking at the structures and then sort of deducing how you're supposed to move just by looking at the structures. And we're sort of reverse engineering it. We're looking at the movements and then seeing what the joints are doing in the context of those proper natural patterns, and then training the joints or training the patterns in accordance with that natural movement or how the human being is supposed to move. And even though we're kind of moving away from a joint by joint approach, because the joint by joint approach has the limitations of only looking at the structure, we are going to go, we started from the ground up. We started from the foot, we made our way up to the knee and through the hip, and we made it up through the spine, and we never quite made it to the shoulders, the scapula, the shoulder girdle, the thoracic spine, and the ball and socket joint of the shoulders. And I wanted to talk about maybe not necessarily the joint structure, because again, that's the limitation that we sort of run into, is if we're talking about just the joint structure, we're going to look at the structure and try to deduce movement. So I'd like to see what movements are supposed to happen through the shoulder, and then reverse engineer it to understand what's happening in the joints as we're doing that. How's that sound today, Will?
That sounds great. And you kind of hit on a point there where, whenever I've heard of the shoulder before, and I've looked, hundreds and hundreds of hours of shoulder material coming from, academia and the internet and whatnot, it's mostly looked at in an anatomical way. Here are the parts. The shoulder is made up of these 4 parts, and they move like this. Okay. The problem with that is that it is way too anatomical, and I don't know how to move afterward. I don't know how to be athletic. I don't know how to stop myself from being injured. And it doesn't match what I see on the slow motion. I'm going to unpack that a little bit, okay? We do have to dive in a little bit into anatomy just because that's where almost everyone's coming from. It's an anatomical approach. I have a problem with my shoulder. How do I anatomically fix it? Okay. So in that way, the shoulder is made up of a ball and socket. Okay. And that ball is much bigger than the socket. So the socket has a issue. That is a stability issue. And it's good in one way because you're able to grasp in multiple planes. That's why your shoulder is able to move so well. It's because you give up a little bit of stability for a lot of motion. Okay? That's the trade-off there. Now, ball and socket is the same thing that happens in the hips, except that your hips don't have the range of motion that your shoulders do because of the scapula. The scapula, the shoulder blade, is helping guide the shoulder a little bit further. And the socket's a little bit deeper in the hip. So the shoulder, what it does is it creates like a little bit of a cup inside the socket. Okay. And that cup is the labrum. This is where a lot of people have problems. Weightlifters, gymnasts, baseball players.
I mean, I just tore my labrum doing CrossFit almost a year ago, right? So that's exactly what happened to me recently.
Okay. So it's happened to a lot of athletes, right? And the reason why it's so vulnerable is because that cup is coming pretty far out of the socket. And it's like a suction cup. It makes the ball go and get into that socket and make sure it doesn't pop out. But when it does pop out, it often shreds the area that it pops out at. Okay, you can have tears in the anterior or posterior. Now, once that happens, you lose stability. That's on the injury end of things, and that's why it's important to know the anatomy, okay, and know the basic structures. But as far as movement is concerned, and what I see in slow motion, what I'm seeing as the biggest missing piece is the cornering, is the movement of the shoulder around the go-to movement would say around the corner, but I just say it's like a screw out mechanism of the shoulder. You know this when you're throwing or punching. Let's say you overhand throw, your shoulder will screw in, okay? And it will go with momentum until you stop it. So it's either going to have to go in a circle so you can the energy has to go in a circle in order to stop, or you're going to hurt your shoulder. Okay. I'm going to unpack that a little bit as well afterwards. But the point is, you need to corner your shoulder. I see it in not a lot of mainstream practices. Bench press doesn't do it. Most pressing exercises don't do it. Push-ups don't do it. It's nowhere to be found in mainstream fitness. Maybe we can go a little further with that. Do you have a question on it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I just want to slow down a little bit because you're talking about some mainstream ways of training, like things like a bench press and things like, I've done some gymnastics training where a lot of the ring push-up work, you would actually do that. You would rotate, but you would rotate almost the other direction. So you wouldn't rotate your wrists in. You would, instead of pronating, you would almost like supinate your wrists out. And that's
let's go with that for a second. Let's go with that for a second, because a lot of people know this example. If you watch, while I'm talking here, do you want to pull up someone on the rings in that position?
Yeah.
Pull up an Olympian or something. Okay, so basically it's like this. What you just showed me is a very stable position, okay? You showed me, analogous to your legs having a bow, you just showed me a bow with your arms.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you showed me a stable position with your arms, but you didn't finish the energy. Okay, so you can see that his elbows are pointing forward, and this is always the way I used to coach it in CrossFit. And this is a very strong, very stable position. If you're on the rings, if you're listening, your hands are pointed, your palms are facing toward the front, and so are your elbow creases. And if you're on a set of rings, that's the strongest way to be on there. You'll see it in the Olympics, okay? Now, what he's missing is the fact that you need to bring your shoulder unilaterally, one side only, in order to be healthy for the most part, around the corner. So you're only doing half the motion here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what I'm saying by that?
Yeah. So you're saying that the shoulder work, like what I'm hearing is that the healthiest function of the shoulder is through unilaterally doing this move. Like the fact that he has a bilateral position, he has these double bows happening in his arms. That's not the healthiest expression of shoulder movement.
It's a expression of shoulder motion,
Right.
that is him holding tension in an externally rotated isometric, meaning holding still position, right?
Mm.
So he is strong in that position, but is it the primary function of the shoulder to move like that? Absolutely not. It's one of the, I would say, 15th, 20th down the list if I was going to make a hypothetical list. Okay, so if you're into gymnastics, this is very important. If you're into CrossFit, you need to get this strong. If you want healthy shoulders for life, you don't need to do this, or very little of it. Okay, that's my assertion there. Feel free to question that, though.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, the have you ever seen like the guy, like there was a Navy SEAL who had he did this thing called the perfect push-up, where it's literally rotating handles, and I'm pulling it up now. And so what, this is an interesting thing. So if you're saying that there's a bow and a corner, as in like you're almost you're sort of supinated more with your wrists when you're in that extended position through your chest, right? So like say we're throwing a punch, right? When you extend the punch, your wrist turns in towards your body. You could almost emulate that with this quote perfect push-up. Now, you're watching this guy and his wrist turns in as he comes up. Is that a healthier expression of shoulder movement? Like is like we're doing push-ups? Are you now training shoulder health by rotating as you press, kind of thing?
Yes, I would say this is a much more healthy and full expression of the shoulders. This is literally the perfect video that you could have pulled up. One, I use these in the office on patients who have shoulder issues because it really teaches the proper cornering of the shoulder. And right now we're seeing him, I'm sure most people have seen the rotating perfect push-up, so it's great. For the listeners here, he's rotating his knuckles out. Okay, so basically he's internally rotating his humerus, his upper arm, towards the inside as he's doing the push-up, right? That is the proper expression of an overhead motion in movement. Okay, so he's outletting the energy here, much like a heel away in the foot. Okay, I find those analogous for the people who are really into this. The hand and the foot basically rotate the same way to outlet energy. So right now, he's in a double bow into a double corner, double bow into a double corner. The double bow is when he's in that bottom position, and the double corner is when he's at the very top, expressing his hands inwards in the push-up at the top.
So if you were reversing this movement, and say you were doing a row on the rings, right? Like if you're doing a ring row. And again, I'm using these, even though we're talking about a lot of what we talked about kind of goes against conventional training, I like going through some conventional training ideas, like things like push-ups and rows, for example, and being like, how can we make this respect natural biomechanics a little bit more? So if you're watching him at the bottom here, the bottom position, his knuckles are turned out. So if you were doing a row, would you have your palms neutral? Your knuckles would be out, and then when you extend, your knuckles would kind of turn in a little bit. Could you reverse that movement?
So it kind of depends if you're going underhand or overhand, because things switch when you're underhand or overhand. Take a look at a boxing punch. Whenever a boxer does an uppercut, he's going to screw outwards. Okay, but when he's going overhand, he's going to screw inwards. Try punching. It's like the old Irish fighter style, to have the knuckles up and punch forward like this, like with your knuckles downwards, but that never really happens in real life. If you're punching overhead, you're going to throw your hand upwards. Your knuckles will come overhead, okay, toward the internal, exactly like the push-up you just saw. Okay, there's going to be a turning since we're on the subject, there's going to be a turning of his thoracic spine, his hips, his shoulder blade, and his humerus, the ball and socket, at the same time, in simultaneously, or just milliseconds after each other in a chain, and that's what outlets the energy properly. Here, you see his knuckle come up. Basically, the strong side of his hand, when you're throwing an uppercut, the strong side is going to come up, and you're going to screw inwards. If you're overhead, you're screwing outwards. Okay? This is always going to be the case. Try grabbing a door handle, you know, if it's, I shouldn't say door handle, something really high above you in like a underhand position. You're probably not going to do it. You're probably, if you're in the cupboard and really reaching up, you're going to go in an overhand position to grab it. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm just watching this. I'm watching this uppercut, right? And I'm seeing how the corkscrew kind of changes. Like an overhand, you corkscrew in, underhand, you corkscrew that. I'm gonna
show the punches right now, just so the viewers can see it. Basically, if I'm uppercutting, here is the hand coming up like this. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Okay, overhand like that. Does this make sense for overhand?
Yeah. Okay, you can really see it.
Even do it if you try. For an uppercut, if I come in like this, if I don't corkscrew underneath and internally rotate, adduct towards my body, even though I hate using those anatomical terms, people will understand it this way. If I have to corkscrew in towards the center of my body to throw that uppercut, turn my hand inwards. I can't do it the other way. Not possible. Or goes against the feeling. Okay, so that's really what happens. I would mimic that in the bodybuilding or lifting sense.
So if you're doing an underhand row,
lateral, if you want to make it more functional.
Right. So if you're doing an underhand row, then you're gonna start, you know, with that underhand position, and then when you come in, you're gonna end in that neutral position anyway, right? That's sort of the idea that you're kind of getting at.
Sure, I would probably do it like that. Yeah. I'm not saying you can't do it the other way, but I want to generally respect the way it's done. If I have to reach out and grab something, for the most part, you're grasping, you're reaching, you're striking, you're swinging. These are functions before lifting. Okay, so I want to respect what we do the most and what is the natural design. Again, if I'm doing that uppercut, I can't scoop my hand in the opposite direction. If I'm doing that overhead, I can't scoop my hand in the opposite direction. I have to go the way the physics of the body, the natural biomechanics are allowing me to go. I couldn't possibly do it the other way.
So we're saying basically in like when you're extending your arm, the natural movement through your shoulder will create a corkscrew. That's if you're doing it normally. And what you kind of want to think about is, you know, when you watch someone punching forward, doing a jab or something, their wrist will naturally corkscrew in. But contrast that with the extension through the pecs of a bench press, where you are, you know, fixed by this barbell and you can't rotate the wrists internally or externally. You can't supinate or pronate. You can't do any of that. You're in this fixed bar path. And there are some like, what would you say are the implications of training yourself out of that natural rotation that happens within the joint as you extend or retract?
Well, you're going to be stiffer. Things aren't going to click in the proper sequence. Okay. Let's take bench press, for example, or even incline press, or any of the presses where you're on a bench. Your back is fixed. Your core is outsourced its power and its function to the bench. Okay, so you're pressing into the bench. So now your core is off. Okay, I shouldn't even say core. Your rotation's not going to be there because you're stuck to the bench. You're not pushing out of your feet in the way that you would if you were walking or running. Okay, so right off the bat, it's not the same right there, because 99% of your functions are going to be done on your feet. Okay, so with the bench press, you're pushing up and down in a linear plane. Okay, a lot of people give cues like squeeze the bar, break the bar with your basically squeeze the bar and try to break it.
Yeah, like imagine you're bending it and trying to snap it like a twig kind of thing.
Exactly, right? Most people do it in the underhand direction because that's a very stable direction, but is it the same as a punch? Do you know what I mean? Like when I'm doing it naturally, it's actually corkscrewing the opposite. Okay, so in bench, we want to break towards the inside. Okay, that would be opposite of what I want to do if I want to throw an overhead punch. That's corkscrewing towards the outside. Okay, sorry, that's opposite. So I'm corkscrewing my hand in, okay, during a punch, and during the bench, I'm trying to break it and have my thumb corkscrewing out. That was the cue I used to use while I was powerlifting. Okay,
yeah.
So now we have the core not moving at all. We have the shoulder moving in the opposite direction. We have the weight of the barbell itself, because you can load this quite a bit on the shoulder girdle. I used to have huge amounts of inflammation all over my shoulder girdle from lifting heavy in previously. And this is all to get power in the pec so that you'll have bigger pecs or more powerful motions there, but they don't respect actual motions that happen in real life. So again, it's a dance. You need your hips to turn. You need your ribs to turn, and your thoracic spine goes with it. You need the scapula to come out, to protract towards the outside. Then you need the ball to spin in the socket. That transfers the spin like a shaft over to your arm, and then you outlet the power to your hand.
Right. So what I'm hearing too is because there is such an integrated approach to this movement through the shoulder. Again, you can't isolate the movement through the shoulder without it occurring through the thoracic spine, the rotation in the upper body. You couldn't just address this issue. For those who are listening, they're like, oh, like that's fine. I'll just lay on a bench with one dumbbell and I'll corkscrew in like I'm throwing a punch. But what I'm hearing is because there's so many more components of the body, like, you need to have some, maybe even a pivoting from the foot, you're driving through your foot, you're rotating through the core. You don't want to have basically don't lay on a bench and press if you want to have functional integrated movement through the shoulder.
Yeah, well, I mean, people would argue with me over the amount that you can bench press and still keep these patterns. What I would think is that, and what's not taken into account basically anywhere, is that you're cranking your nervous system up to the max when you're bench pressing, squatting, deadlifting, anything with a heavy barbell, right? Your nervous system is at its peak, basically. So when you go to do a peak behavior in an athletic endeavor or in real life, are you going to default to that same motion? Okay, so if I'm bench pressing, is my body going to tense up like I'm bench pressing if I have to outlet my nervous system at a high rate? I want to keep the movements as clean as possible and only teach my body that way. So when my nervous system goes to crank up and I need to do something fast, everything's going to be in unison. All the parts are going to be working together. Now, again, the bench press and the lifts, the traditional bodybuilding lifts and powerlifting lifts, they want to get the muscle bigger in order to increase the horsepower. Okay, that's the thought process, and it doesn't go to the level of what are the parts doing and how do we integrate them.
Right. And so, one of the things that we want to do in future episodes as well is kind of go over systems like powerlifting, like bodybuilding, like CrossFit, and sort of see, is there a way to take what their goals are and train them through the lens of a better map, right? And when we say a better map, we mean respecting the natural biomechanics of how we are meant to move. Like, can we look at the gait cycle and train specifically within the gait cycle and within the pattern? Like, can we take the shoulder girdle, for example, and can we move through that rotational and take that whole movement? Can we load it and say, build muscle the same way a bodybuilder is intending to build muscle within the sort of parameters of natural human movement? We're going to dedicate whole episodes to that. And I think the answer is yes, personally. It takes a little bit of creativity and maybe a little bit more equipment than making use of cables and different things and like sleds and what have you. But I'm very, very confident that you can look at the prime drivers of hypertrophy and you can apply them to natural human biomechanics and natural movement, right? Like, I don't think it doesn't it's probably sounds more complicated than it actually is.
Well, here's the thing. Most people are doing fitness for aesthetic reasons, at least in the top 3 reasons, right? Like most people are going to the gym for that. So there is a huge component of wanting hypertrophy, wanting the muscles to look good. And there's nothing wrong with this, right? It's like, what you're saying is great, but how do I pack on some abs and some biceps and still look good, right?
Right.
So you can do that. And I'm in full belief you can do it. Can you maximize everything? No, I don't think so. I want to maximize, like, my personal goal is to maximize movement. So I have to concentrate on that and dedicate time to it. So that's my goal. But if your goal is not so much movement, but to stay healthy, we can maximize that and make use of your time. But at the same time, I want to get aesthetically better as well. You can dedicate time to that and still respect the motions at the shoulder. They just may not be the traditional lifts you're used to.
I mean, even Naudi Aguilar this morning, the guy who founded Functional Patterns, on his Functional Patterns Instagram, he put up a poll asking if aesthetics has to come at the cost of functionality. And the point that he made is that sprinters have amazing physiques. It's not because they lift, it's because they use their muscles in relation to fundamental functionality. If you can sprint like an elite sprinter, you'll look like an elite sprinter. And, that's true. I mean, you look at sprinters and they have incredible muscle. And in fact, some of the most aesthetic physiques that I see, barring physique athletes, are sprinters. A lot of physique athletes will throw sprinting in to their training regimens in competition prep so that they can, adopt some of the physique qualities of sprinters. And sprinters are literally just, they're trying to run or sprint as efficiently and effectively and powerfully as possible. And that, in theory, if you're sprinting properly with good, quote, technique, we pulled up that video of Usain Bolt last episode and you looked at how good his spinal engine was and like your muscles will be very, very well developed if you do this with enough intensity, right? So it doesn't, like you said, you aren't going to be a bodybuilder. And I was talking to Gary Scheffler of the GLS, like their athletic training facility, and he just said, none of our guys look like bodybuilders, but we can put on 20 pounds on our athletes in the off season by training GOTA, right? Like and GOTA will not do conventional weightlifting. They're not getting their athletes to bench. They do some pressing movements, they do push-ups and stuff, but they're not getting people to do these big heavy squats. Like they would never put a heavy barbell on their athletes.
Well, they're moving weight forward, not up and down. That's what I'm totally on board for that. Sled pushes, sprints, landmines. There's a lot of different mechanisms in order to move weight forward. You can still load it, maybe not as much as the traditional lifts that are just straight up and down, but you're going to get a lot more fruit in the movement if you do it that way. Basically, it's like this. Slow motion dictates what the movements are. Okay, your body dictates the movements, but I watch it on the slow motion, and I'm not going to deny what I'm seeing. I see rotations happen. So why would I isolate against those rotations, right? I'm just doing what the slow motion is saying, and I'm devising exercises in order to respect the motions that I'm seeing, not only the motions, but the sequences of the motions. Okay, that's also very important. That's not taken into account in traditional lifting. Even the rehab world and strength and conditioning world says, let's pack on massive, let's take the pecs or the glutes, right? Let's take the glutes. Let's put on massive glutes by doing squats, okay? Heavy squats, heavy compound lifts, and somehow that's going to integrate into sprinting. You know what? Your sprint coach will do it because he's teaching you the sprinting. I'm teaching you how to maximize your central nervous system and your muscle combined. That will be gold. But we can actually break it down better than that. Okay, we can be like, okay, here's the behavior at the femur, here's the behavior at the hip. Is there some sort of exercise I can devise that will match that and still able to be loaded, or repetition with no damage? That's the key.
Right. So this is the fundamental difference that I wanted to re-emphasize that I mentioned at the start of the podcast, where prior, when we were talking about a joint by joint approach, you would start by looking at the joint and then devise movements. Here, it's sort of like a movement joint movement approach when you're figuring out how to train the body, right? You're looking at the movements first. So, Will brings up the slow motion video. When we talk about that, we're looking at video footage of athletes who are the best at their sport, who are the most efficient, effective, injury-free, the greatest of all-time athletes. That's why GOATA is what GOATA stands for, the greatest of all-time athletes, or the greatest of all-time actions, which were derived and devised from looking at footage of athletes who had longevity in their career or who had little to no injury. And so if you look at these patterns and these behaviors, then you can figure out what's happening in the joint while those behaviors are occurring. So you look at the movement first, and then you go on a joint by joint basis in relation to those patterns. Once you've figured out what's happening within the joints in relation to those patterns, then you can start training those joints. You could even isolate a joint by joint basis to, like, for example, one of the principles of that we've talked about is keeping your inside ankle bone high. That's like one of the fundamentals of creating a good bow and a corner for your hips and your knees when you're in your gait. You can train your foot in isolation by doing different raises on the outside edge of your foot to start training the musculature and to start training the structure to remain high throughout the gait cycle. You can train it in different contexts and different angles that it will appear within your gait cycle. You can isolate the joint in the context of the movement that it's going to be doing. And so rather than a joint by joint approach where you're looking at the structure and then sort of trying to deduce movement based on how you think the structure looks or how it can move, you're looking at the movements and then figuring out how does the joint operate optimally within the context of that movement pattern, and then you train that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really nailed it there. I can't really say much more about that. So, let's go back to the shoulder itself, though.
Yeah. Tangents.
I mean, the tangents. Yeah, we both have to keep ourselves in line with that because we tend to do it, but it's great.
We just love this stuff, We're talking. Yeah, it's interesting stuff, right? Once you dive into it, it's okay to let your mind ask questions and go to different places. But you're saying the shoulder, right? Questions,
right? So let's go back to the shoulder and let's take another system that is, claiming to kind of solve the puzzle here. Functional range conditioning, okay? FRC, a lot of athletes know this. And this is the theory that you should, or application or system that they have, that you should take each joint and move it through its range of motion. So with the shoulder, they will isolate it and they will move it in its full range of motion, which is great. It's working on the articulation, the exact motions of the shoulder itself. If you look at the anatomy, okay, that's all good stuff. But are they respecting the sequences? I would think not, okay? I don't see anywhere that functional range conditioning or bodybuilding or powerlifting respect the sequences that happen in your body as you're running, throwing, walking, sprinting. None of that happens. In fact, I'm going to pull up an FRC clip right now of a, let me find it here. It's going to be a practitioner who's doing some shoulder rotations, okay? And we'll take a look at how they're doing the shoulder rotations, and we'll go from there, okay? And I'll do a little bit of a commentary.
Cool. And for those who don't know what FRC is functional range conditioning, which is a system that I think was founded by Dr. Andrea Spina. Didn't you go to school with Andrea?
He was in the same school as me a couple of years before me.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So they kind of went through the same, educational path, and he derived this system that, it has its own terminology, like pails and rails. And if you're not familiar with it, it's basically focused on joint articulation. like Will said, moving the joint through its full ranges of motion. This is a popular idea that's been around for ages. Even old Russian strength coaches like Pavel Sausalin really advocated, continual articulation and repetitions of articulation for longevity of joint health and everything. And just while Will shares his screen here, I'm just giving you a little bit of background info on it. This is a really popular system that's gained a lot of momentum over the last few years. How's your screen share coming?
Can you see mine?
No.
No? Oh. Really not good at sharing my screen. That's
so there's the share screen button, and then if you hit share entire screen, it'll open up another menu. And then click.
It's not letting me share, so I'm going to redo it here.
And if it doesn't, you can also send me the link.
There it is. Okay. That work?
Yeah, now we can see your screen.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to pull it up here. Okay, so this is basically, I'm going to give a little narrative of what's happening here. Again, we're looking at the ball and socket in, I believe it's going to be his right shoulder. And he's going to move it in its full range of motion. But notice what's happening at his core. It's not moving at all. He's staying super pin stiff. Again, the brace the core model seeping in here. And is this a real motion in real life? Okay, very good range of motion. This guy's obviously fit. He's been, actually, I know who this guy is. He's on Instagram. Personal trainer Jack Harahan, I think. But he's moving his shoulder in full range of motion, right? And he's doing it slowly, and he's trying to gain those extra centimeters, inches, without compromising the structure of the shoulder. Now, the goal here is to move your shoulder in pain-free range and increase it daily, so that every day you're getting better and better at isolating the parts of your shoulder. But is he rotating his spine here? No, he's not rotating anything at his hips, not rotating anything at his spine, not even thinking about the feet. In fact, they're instructed to keep their core stiff. This will never, ever happen in real life, ever, that you stay that stiff. So their counter argument, of course, would be, well, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to isolate only the articulations. And, once that happens, you will be able to transfer it into real life. Well, is that the case? I don't know. I would say that you have to train from the foot up, or from the hip up, especially, and the spine to be spinal engine, okay?
Right.
Be able to move back and forth and rotate as you're throwing or as you're moving.
Yeah, so compare that shoulder articulation to this is a common movement that's used in gymnastics training called the xiaopeng. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's a Chinese name, but how I would improve that based on what you're saying is, like, you can see in the rotation behind, he gets that nice spinal movement and a little bit more. But when he comes forward, he doesn't have little to no spinal rotation. Is mostly articulation from the shoulder. So if you're saying thoracic rotation is almost like a fundamental part of healthy shoulder movement, would you rotate forward as you're coming forward and rotate back as you're coming back, or would you?
I would follow the natural. This is natural rotation, right? If he was to rotate the opposite way, he wouldn't be able to move his shoulder like that. Okay, so your shoulder will your body will naturally rotate it if you let it. Now, if you watch the FRC guy again, he's keeping his core so tight in order to not rotate, because they're instructed to not do that, because brace the core is the concept. Go a couple down. What's it? It was there. Brace the core is the concept. Okay, how I would improve it, even upon the guy that you just showed me, was to integrate hips with it. Then I would integrate feet with it. I would integrate the bow with it. There's so many levels you can take it to. But you can also isolate it too. There's nothing wrong with isolating the way that what you just showed with the thoracic rotation. Sometimes I do isolate movement. But for a natural expression of movement, you need to do it all. Okay, you'll never see that motion in real life.
Well, let me slow down because this is an interesting idea. What context would you isolate movement in? If the priority is training things in in terms of their system, in terms of the interconnected nature of movement, is you're not just isolating a joint. If you're moving your shoulder, then you're also rotating your thoracic spine and your hips, and you're setting the bow through your, like, where's the context where you start isolating?
When you need stability. So like in gymnastics, I don't want to move my spine from side to side if I'm holding rings, right? Like in specialized scenarios where you need power and real force, you want to be static. You want to train yourself to be able to hold those positions. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's used in those contexts, but it's not the priority of your shoulder, in my opinion. Okay,
So,
and my opinion is based on the fact that you walk all day, and your shoulders are swinging back and forth. You're having a thoracic rotation. You're grasping for things all day. The amount that you're on a gymnastics ring is very, very, very minuscule.
so let's take away the context of a specialized sport like gymnastics or Olympic lifting or CrossFit, and let's just take a normal person who lives a fairly active life. They like getting out and doing outdoor activities, and they don't necessarily have a formal training system. Maybe they go to the gym once in a while, but they have hypermobile joints, right? Like they have joints that lack stability in almost any range, right? Like they can be bent in any shape, essentially, and that lack of structural stability, their doctor tells them, okay, well, you have an issue where at some point your joints aren't stable enough to support themselves. You might need a hip replacement. You might need surgery down the line. Would you start isolating joint activity there, or would you try to focus on patterns, and would you focus on training positioning or would you focus on that joint articulation and that joint stability?
As a priority, I always go to the math. The math is what I see in slow motion, and I try to train those patterns in a simplistic way. This is if someone's not an athlete, okay? Now I do like the functional range conditioning style where I'll isolate a joint, especially if the person has no what's called proprioception feeling of the joint. It's great to isolate it, and I don't care about integrating the body at that point because they're not even there yet. So I try to do both at the same time. I used to do a lot more isolating of the joint. Now I just use it as a baseline in order to put in a proprioception feeling for the global movements, for the spirals, for the for the math, for what I see in slow motion.
Right. So you wouldn't have to say, basically, you wouldn't necessarily say that like a person, let's say they're maybe even like they have an athletic background and they have hypermobile joints. You wouldn't necessarily be like, you got to go isolate these and create more structural stability in through your shoulders before you can start moving these patterns. You would start training the patterns directly, kind of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't even, the whole stability, mobility model, I don't really even subscribe it anymore in a large way because that's not my end goal. My end goal is to get you to do motions that I see naturally happen all the time. Unless you're a gymnast. If you're a gymnast or CrossFit athlete or a lifter, I'm going to do something different for you. But for the 99% of people, or I'm going to go into what the natural motions are so you don't get hurt and you can have the joints, your shoulders, let's say, for life.
So let's say a person is listening to this and they're like, but I love CrossFit. Like, like I don't want it to just be, I like this idea of joint longevity, and I like the idea of like my body moving, in respect to the mathematics of the way I'm supposed to move. Can I train both? Can I still do, a couple of CrossFit classes a week, or can I do some Olympic weightlifting? And can I, what percentage of their training can they get away with and still maintain these patterns. And I know you mentioned that, where it's like, I'll talk to a guy, it's like, how much can you bench before you lose that shoulder structure or that shoulder rotation? But if someone's saying, hey, I want both, can I do it? What would you tell them?
I would say modify your exercises. If you want to do a CrossFit style workout where you're getting the burn, the cardio, the weightlifting, you're just going to have to modify exercises, okay? Instead of a snatch, you're going to do a dumbbell press with a twist of your upper body, okay? So you more respect the natural motions. You're still getting the workout. All that's happening. You're just more replacing lifting up and down with lifting forward, or respecting the way the body twists, or let's say the shoulder, for example. Again, the snatch versus the dumbbell twist, where I can outlet the power through the top, respecting the motions. Do you know what I mean? So you can still do that. Is it the best way to integrate movement into your body? Probably not. Are people's fitness goals different? Absolutely. So really the answer to my question is, what is your fitness goal? If your fitness goal is to still stay in CrossFit, or still stay in powerlifting, and at the same time integrate these type of exercises where you're respecting natural harmonious motions, okay, that are happening in unison or timed perfectly by your body, ideally, okay, like twisting your hips, like twisting your midsection, like twisting your shoulders and you're outletting power to your hands, then you want to do more of that. And to be honest, most people, this is talking like a therapist right now, seeing thousands of patients, most people have very, very poor mechanics in their joints. Okay, it's not a lot of people who already have good mechanics. So not only do you not have good mechanics for the most part, you're now accelerating into heavy lifts with those not so great mechanics. You're going to get injured probably. Okay, so you want to put some major focus at some point into how to integrate the two approaches if you want longevity.
So you're saying that at any point, like, you kind of have to, first of all, get real with what your fitness goals are. Like, if you want to be a good Olympic lifter, you're not going to prioritize natural movement, because let's be real, Olympic lifting is not natural movement. Even when the GOATA guys talk about Olympic lifting, they call it reverse gear technology. It's as in, like, it's training you to move backwards. If you think about, if you're halfway through the pull of a clean and you let go of the bar, you're moving backwards, not forwards, right? So you're training backwards movement. You're driving through your heels as opposed to, ingraining, pivoting on your toes. It's like you said, any heavy weightlifting, because you have to keep so much tension, because there's so much neural drive required to maintain that level of tension, you're ingraining that pattern in your nervous system more. If your goal is to be an Olympic weightlifter, you're not going to prioritize this very much. You can still try to pattern it, I guess, in your gait and stuff, in your day-to-day movement. You can be cognizant of it in your day-to-day movement. But for the most part, you want to optimize your body to move in a way that it's not necessarily meant to or designed to natively.
Yeah, I'd say you want to respect the motions. Like, Olympic lifting has been looked at as the pinnacle of sports training for a while now. Okay, and that's just the reality of it. And the thought processes behind that are, you can gain a lot of power, easy to teach, especially the clean. You can load and still explode, but to me, it's just not specific enough to how the body moves if locomotion and longevity of your joints are a priority. That's just the fact for me now. I want to pull up a video of an Olympic lifter and just go through the differences. What I see with the shoulder and just in general. I'll give an overview of what I'm seeing here. And sorry, were you going to ask a question?
I was just going to say, like, this is an important thing that I don't want people to glaze over as they're listening. Your goals are important. How you think about your body is important, and questioning why you're prioritizing what you're prioritizing is important. Both Will and I have a background in bodybuilding and powerlifting and CrossFit. We were very competitive we didn't know each other while we were going through that phase either, which I find interesting. Will and I never trained in powerlifting or CrossFit together, but we both kind of come from that background. And for a long time, my background was I was extremely overweight and I wanted to look good. I wanted to lose a bunch of weight. I lost close to 100 pounds, and my goals of building muscle and looking good and being strong, and so sort of like it evolved into sort of a status seeking thing, because amongst the gym community, amongst these people who prioritize their health and prioritize their fitness, there was a status associated with being, the biggest lifter. And I mean, all you have to do is go on Instagram and look at gym memes and to realize that there's a culture that is built around how much weight you can lift and how good you look in a bodybuilding context. CrossFit is its own community, and how fast your Fran time is and how heavy your clean is or your snatch, and like how many pull-ups can you do in a row. These are all things that are associated with some sort of tribal mentality and status, right? And there isn't too much of a tribal identity associated with efficient movement designed for longevity of your system yet. I think GOTA is a cool example, and functional patterns is a cool example of subcultures that are emerging that realize it's like the way that you're training can cause detriments to your body long term. But when you're thinking of your goals, you have to kind of question, why do I want this? I remember the moment when I realized having a six-pack didn't actually make me a happy person. But I chased it for so fucking long, right? Like I wanted it, and I was posting the selfies, and I was like, this doesn't make me any happier. It doesn't make me a better person at all. It doesn't even, I don't even feel that great in my body because I'm training so hard. I can't even fucking have sex with my girlfriend sometimes because my back's so fucking sore and my hips are so locked up. Like, what the fuck? So questioning your goals in the first place, my goals have evolved so much. I went through gymnastics. I went through yoga. I went through, the Ido Portal method. I went through the ATG system. I went through so many different things trying to figure out, like, how's my body just supposed to feel? How's my body supposed to move? And what's the optimal way to be in my body, essentially? And that's why we was so keen to do this podcast with Dr. Will. I find that, even though you have more formal training than I do, I think I was just as obsessed as you were with trying to figure out, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do with my body? And how are humans supposed to move or train, or what's the best way to go about doing all this? I like I said, I snapped my bicep tendon in my labrum doing a CrossFit workout, doing high rep Olympic lifting, doing a ton of snatches when my joints were all locked up. And I've injured myself countless times doing, 400 plus pound squats. And even not to, even warm up squats, I've injured my back and stuff before just because of the loading mechanics. And the joke is that, like, you might be the fittest person in the world, but if you sit in your car wrong, all of a sudden you turn your neck too fast and you're injured. Like, I was like, that can't be right. Like, that can't be the natural way that human beings are meant to feel or operate in their bodies. That's not health. That's not fitness, right? So if you're thinking about your health and fitness goals, what are you trying to be fit for? What does fitness mean to you? How indoctrinated into a system of tribalism in terms of gym culture have you become? And what's actually important, and why is it important to you? Those are some things that you want to ask. So are you having issues with the screen share again?
No. I was just gonna wait for you to finish that. That was great stuff.
Yeah. I like kind of doing extra points while you're pulling stuff up. So
look, while we're on the subject, fitness is almost like politics, right? People are really into what they do. Okay, they don't want to change. And I was in that camp for so long. I loved bodybuilding. You would have told me about GOTA or WEC method or running when I was bodybuilding, I would have been like, okay, leave. I got to do something. Powerlifting, same thing. It's like, man, these are the best. You can pack on as much weight as you can and just go for it. And then I'm getting healthy too. This is amazing. And I'm jacked, right? But I couldn't walk up a mountain. You know what I mean? So and then it got to CrossFit, and I'm supposed to be the most functionally fit. And I'm always hurting, going into adrenal fatigue, having sore muscles all the time. Now, I'm not taking away the positive aspects of any of those because I didn't even glaze over them, but there's tons of positive aspects in the community sense to all these things. They do elevate you in a way, okay? Like CrossFit especially, because it is about moving in many different ways. They just don't go far enough into the intricacies of it. And now that we know in slow motion, we can see it, how the human body moves while moving with one leg, sprinting, running, cutting, sports, real life versus what happens in the gym. Most times you are not lifting external objects. Most times you are not swinging around with reps, okay? This is just not reality. So in that context, it's not functional fitness. In another context, if I'm I've never worked out before, and I just, in my mind, I want to be able to be better at things, CrossFit makes sense, okay?
Yeah.
Deeper dive, we're looking at the joints and trying to respect what happens in real life, okay? So I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to go over the Olympic lifting here. Now, this is Liu Jiwan. Anyone who's an Olympic lifter knows who this guy is. Do you know who this guy is, Anthony?
Oh yeah, of course I do.
Yeah. Okay. So
every highlight video of him ever. He was one of my lifting inspirations for years. I think
me
he's
too.
A fucking specimen, man. Like an absolute
specimen. And Olympic lifting is an amazing sport. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like everything in here this is athleticism at its peak, but it's very specific athleticism. Okay. This does not transfer perfectly into locomotion-based movement sports. Now, major controversy because a lot of strength and conditioning and rehab love the barbell, and so did I. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you what I see here, and we can go from there. Right off the get-go, what is he trying to do? He's trying to maximize tension. Okay, so he's maximizing tension. This is a slow motion lift. Okay, notice something right off the get-go. See how his knees spread? He's gaining amazing power in a bow position. So he's naturally finding that bow, that strong landing position. So this would be what's happening with his hips right now. That's the landing position ideally. But in landing, in running, your hips stay behind you. Right now, he's going to accelerate his hips forward. So again, opposite of what you're doing in running. Okay, so we'll watch that. Now his hips come forward. Boom, he hits the bar with his hips. What just happened there? His hips accelerated forward. His spine accelerated backwards at the very height of your nervous system. So if he was to go run and he wants to cut, I'm going to bet he's going to cut with his heels planted in the ground, which is what's happening when you're lifting. He's going to accelerate his pelvis forward, and he's going to accelerate his spine backwards. This is not what you want to do in an athletic endeavor, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, regular theory of athleticism and strength and conditioning at the moment says that, wow, he is triple extending. He's extending his knees, hips, and his spine at the same time, which is what happens in a lot of athletic activity when you jump. And that's true. It does happen when you jump, just not when you move. That it transfers perfectly, okay? So here he comes. He comes underneath the bar. That is great stuff right there. He lands in that nice squat. That's really nice stuff, right? Like this is a harmony in itself for the sport. But notice one thing with his shoulders. His spine has not rotated at all. There's been no rotations in his body. There's been no movement in his feet. His heels are planted to the ground, which is what you see in ACL tears. You see it in meniscus tears. The bones of the foot the calcaneus, the heel is anchored to the ground. The bones on top of them, the tibia and fibula, cannot spin. So you are going to create stiffness within that joint. And when the bone on top, the femur, has to spin in running, you're going to have a couple stuck bones and one bone that loves to rotate. So let's watch when he comes up. See how his knees came in there? Did you see that? I have it on 0.5 here. Knees come in. This is, to me, this is your locomotion system trying to happen as you're lifting. Knees come in.
That's
boom.
the first time I've ever heard anyone say that's why your knees come in, right? Because the common cue when you're coming up is like drive your feet, like spread the floor apart with your feet so that your knees don't cave in when you're squatting, because that's a biomechanically unfavorable position. But you're saying the natural tendency of the hip is to want to bow in so that it can release that energy. And when you and that's why people's knee, so that's structurally why people's knees cave in as they come up.
That's my theory behind it, okay? And since we're forward locomotive movers, even Lu Zhuan here, who's a clean and jerk specialist, will walk far more than he lifts, way more, okay? When you walk, your femur spins internally every time, unless you have a major issue in the hip, okay? Most regular people, 99.999% of the population will have that femur spin internally as they walk. So it's going to probably want to happen as you lift as well. Basically with lifting, when he gets to the bottom here, he's in a bow. His goal is to keep the bow. So in running, you don't keep the bow. You don't keep the outside, the knees pointed out. You want to spin them inwards as you run. So you're basically only doing half the gait cycle and critically missing the second half of the gait cycle when you Olympic lift. Okay, let's put this forward. He's about to lift. Let's see what happens at the shoulder. Okay, I'll just let him finish the lift here. He drives through his legs. His feet come out. He lands on his heels, and he's way up on the shoulder. Now, one thing I do like about this is he's really pushing up. Okay, because he's pushing up, it almost looks like he's shrugging, but it's happening from his shoulder blades. Can you see my cursor right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, at his shoulder blades, that's what's elevating, not his traps. Okay, so he's clearing room. He's very active through his arms, and notice that you can see his armpits. That's external rotation of your shoulder. That is the strong position of your shoulder in a lift, but it's not what happens during a natural motion. It curves inwards during a natural motion when you're coming from the overhead. Okay, so he is clearing room for his shoulders. He should be because this is a stable position, but it's not what happens in real life most of the time. Okay, so he comes up. Let's see what happens here. I mean, he's lifting 500 pounds. To give the guy some credit. That was amazing. Okay, let's go back to when he lifts here. Okay, so when he comes up, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to show what triple extension looks like. Or actually, no. I'm going to skip that point for today. We'll just go back to this one here. When he lifts up through. Do you see any rotation of his body? Do you see any turning of his hip towards one side? Is it unilateral or is it bilateral behavior? These are all things that don't happen in real life. Everything that you're seeing here is not what happens in real life. Okay, but somehow, because he's able to lift this weight, he's able to transfer this force into real life motion by what? By what mechanism? I'm not sure. Okay, this is that's where the theory kind of breaks down for me. Again, someone would argue, oh, you're not trying to be an Olympic lifter. You're just trying to take the best parts of the Olympic lift, be able to do it easily in the gym. Then your coach will show you the nuances to the sport. Okay.
Right.
Again, my argument is now we can take a look at the slow motion, and we can devise exercises that will respect what happens at each joint during the movement, and that will bring you more fruits for the actual result of having pain-free real life motions integrated into your nervous system that you will default to. Right.
So just to compare and contrast, another strength sport that is absolutely insane that works more in that rotation. So we got shot put, right? And I'm gonna full screen this, and I want you to pay attention to the foot that he's pivoting on as he's throwing, right? And this is interesting too, watching his shoulder position. He has that internally rotated position starting when he's tucked in. But just quickly, this, when we're talking about inside ankle bone high, it almost looks like his inside ankle bone, it's not quite collapsing because he's still on the outside edge of his foot for the pivot. If you look at the pivot point, oh, but then he comes up onto the ball of his foot there. That other foot, external, big load, big release. And again,
That's beautiful stuff. I mean, there's complex motions in there. I could go all day on just this video. Amazing.
Yeah, but just again, like on the left side, watch this foot pivot, and then the amount of energy that gets released on that. He's like midair as he releases it. It's insane. So there's a lot. Go ahead.
So the current theory would be, okay, we're going to get this guy deadlifting 600 pounds, and he's going to take that power from the central nervous system that he gets from lifting the 600 pounds and the hypertrophy and the big muscles, and we're going to be able to transfer it into the shot put. Now, for a sport like shot put, maybe that would be the case, that putting on massive amounts of muscle is helping because of the action. Like basically, if you're heavier, you can throw the ball further, okay, because you have more mass. So that may be advantageous in the sport. But I would predict there's going to be better ways to train this type of thing that don't have to have 600-pound deadlifts, okay? Even with a specialized sport like this, you can still move weight forward. He's pushing weight forward there. He's not pushing it up and down at all. And he's respecting principles of biomechanics and momentum as he's doing it, okay? That's where the sport-specific stuff comes in, where you need a coach that knows what he's doing. My assertion is that the weight room of extremely heavy lifting and specific biomechanics do not match perfectly. And now we can get more specific with those biomechanics and still load it.
So, and again, we're gonna break down each system. Like I sat down with a pen and paper the other day and I wrote out as many CrossFit specific movements as I could think of, from deadlifts to wall balls to box jumps to, cardio machines to burpees and everything. And I wrote out, if I was going to do a functional quote unquote version of this. And again, I think, what this podcast is about is kind of redefining functional fitness based on the natural functions of the human body, rather than saying it's just, moving through the squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge patterns that have been sort of defaulted as the natural movements of fitness in general. We're looking at more fundamental levels of human movement and then trying to figure out how can we load and effectively train those, right? And we're going to go through system by system over time. We're going to kind of look at how we can make those more elegant, more efficient, more true to the math is the way that, you like to put it, right? So, just to go back to the shoulder, right? Because the shoulder is a funny thing. I've done the FRC shoulder articulations. I stopped doing barbell pressing just to see how my shoulders would feel. All of my pull-up work and pushing work is done on rings, so there is a natural rotation in my shoulder. And as someone who has shoulder problems now, I'm a few months away from surgery. I find that that's like the way that I can train my shoulder without pain and get to the joint is by having that free rotational capacity in it as well. I also started, when I'm doing single arm pressing with a kettlebell, for example, there's a rotation and a pivot on my foot so that I can get that extension through the thoracic spine and get a more rotational element. And again, I'm finding that's not only just challenging my shoulder muscles, quote unquote. If you're doing a press, you're presumably doing shoulders, but I'm finding it's also holding up a light to it's kind of putting me under a microscope and showing me where my mobility limitations are, because as soon as I'm under load, the mobility and the structural stability that I have in these positions starts to break down a lot. So if you were going to say, like, how should you approach the shoulder joint, what should you deprioritize and what should you start prioritizing in terms of movement? Where would you start?
I would start with reintegrating a bow and a corner, basically cornering your shoulder. And what cornering your shoulder really means is respecting the spinal engine, having the spine have that rotation and lean so that I can grasp and have my shoulder go around the corner. So a good way to do this is just slow punch and let your shoulder blade come out. Your body will naturally rotate. That's the real position of the shoulder to be trained. Now, I mean, I can't really break down exactly how I would do it, but that would be the easiest way. Start respecting the motions. This is crawling. Basically, a kid will crawl like this. And that is basically the way to do it. If you want to, start crawling again. Okay, there's a specific way to do that. Most people won't, but crawling patterns really, really respect that type of motion where your shoulder is moving with a spine that's turned, bent, and you can use your shoulders like that. Okay, again, spirals with the rope is a good way to start. Okay, that'll be on my Instagram. Any more specific question on that, or?
You know, I just want to touch on the crawling thing real quick, because the crawling is one of these things, and I started playing with it, crawling locomotion patterns, when I got into Ido Portal's stuff. Like the Ido Portal method really emphasized. He was the first person who I said who said stop training and start moving. And I got really into his stuff for a little while. And one of the moves that one of the patterns, the locomotive patterns that he did was a lizard crawl, which if you look at, like, you're super low to the ground, you want to challenge your fucking shoulder joints, you try to do a lizard crawl low to the ground. That shit is tough. That shit is super, super tough. And I can even pull up, I'd made a video of me trying to do it the other day.
Yeah, pull up that video. I'm gonna pull up a baby crawling video and kind of go through that. So I want to pull up, because it's really important to get this concept. If you don't get what cornering means, it's literally the difference of what most people know now and the three-dimensional model. Okay, your hip. This is actually common sense, and it's in physiotherapy and chiropractic and anatomy. They know the hip has motions that are going in an overhead pattern. But they also, because you're moving forward, it's more of a figure 8 pattern. Your shoulders are doing the same thing. It's like a swimming motion. It's literally swimming, right? You're not dead straight when you're swimming. You have to turn your body. Okay, so crawling is like swimming. That's even maybe even a better example.
So swimming is a phenomenal way to approach the sort of the bowing and the cornering analogy of your shoulder. And I just wanted to kind of, I was, just at home messing around trying to get the spinal movement, and this was like one of my attempts that I actually filmed. But the specific movement that I want to show is that when I come onto my hand, I'm still on the outside edge of my hand. And then as I come off, I'm still cornering off that shoulder, right? So the movement through the shoulder is pretty dramatic, and the loading through the shoulder as I'm transferring from one side of hip rotation and spine rotation to the other is very, very dramatic. So there is a bowing and a cornering effect kind of happening here. You're seeing the rotation through the spine and through the hips as the hips go from one side to the other. And the amount of spinal movement in this and the amount of shoulder loading that happens through this is massive. And you can kind of see that transference of weight from one side to the next. I'm still on the outside edge of my hand the same way that I would corner on the outside edge of my foot. Now, my foot positioning was a little inefficient here. You can kind of see I come onto the ball of my foot and rotate on the ball as opposed to the outside edge. But I'm still trying to figure that out. That's why I record myself. That's why it's useful to film yourself when you're doing these more intricate patterns.
So what I was watching there, that was really complex. Like a lizard crawl, most people aren't going to get like for a long time. You need ranges of motion, you need strength. A baby crawl or a lizard crawl that is a little bit higher up. Okay, that makes it a lot easier. You want your butt to be below and behind your rib cage. Okay. Every time. So I want my pelvis to be a little bit lower than what I saw there. Your pelvis was way up compared to
really high. Yeah.
So that would be a fault that I would say there. An easy way is to just make sure your butt is below your rib cage. You're nice and tall as you're crawling, and you'll naturally move in those motions. So let me pull up a video here. And oh, I still have another ad. Look at that.
You have to get ad blocker, man. It's like,
Yeah. No, I actually have an account. I just pulled up the wrong account here.
oh, there you go.
Watch these babies go. Look at them. Okay, so I just
It's a baby crawl race. That's so funny.
Yeah, no, I clicked a random video there. This is really interesting stuff here. Look at, he's creating a bow. Let's get a clean video of a baby crawling here. All right, there it is right there.
Oh my God, this is so funny.
Okay, take a look at, yeah, no, exactly, right? Take a look at this kid. So right now, this part of his spine is going to be bent. He's going to use this femur to go to the other side, okay? So, oh, sorry, that was opposite. Right now, this leg is touched down, so this would be like your foot if you're standing. He can't go on his feet because he doesn't have the balance, so he's using his knee as a foot, okay? His spine is bent towards that side, and he's already unloaded the energy, okay? So he's going to pull his other leg forward and just go back and forth and wiggle. His head is up, but his spine is wiggling. Notice
yeah, this is the whole thing on the spinal engine that we talked about. Like we talked about the spinal engine last episode, and this is another example of like they're undulating their spine to move their knees forward and back to create and the you know, the bowing and cornering effect. Their leg kind of bows out to store energy, and then as they undulate their spine in the other way, that releases the energy. This is a really funny video for anyone who's listening on Spotify or iTunes. Where go to nofilter.net and watch the video replay of this. It's literally a video of like a bunch of adults trying to get these babies to cross a finish line. It's like held in a basketball court. It's very, very fucking funny.
Okay, I just slow-mo. That's really funny, right? Take a look at his feet right now. This baby has some serious, amazing crawling behavior. Both of them do. I just put a still image down here. Take a look at the heel away behavior on the front baby. Okay, right there. Take a look at the both heels away on the back baby. Well, as he's crawling, very nice arch on his foot. Okay, already. He's setting that spinal engine. Notice the creasing in his shirt here. Like if I was to put it back one frame, you'll see the crease right there, right? Like every time he bends over to this side, you can really see it there. There is where he's loading the engine. Here is the side bend, and then he's going to snap out of that to the other side, right? So he just stopped after his last step, but basically it's the same motion as what's happening in an adult. This is literally how to, if you really want to get down to it, I would rehab my shoulder like this. Most people are not willing to do it. So in that case, it's going to have to be done with more traditional methods. But in the first place, I wouldn't even subject my shoulder to repetitious loading that doesn't respect the turns and the corners in the shoulder that you see during natural motion, baby to athlete to anyone you see that's really athletic, you'll see a sway from side to side. That sway is the spinal engine. That's what you just saw on baby.
And you know, so like what you just said, the way that you would start rehabbing a shoulder is that you'd get people to crawl and regain their fundamental patterns. This is like, you know, I remember seeing a video, again, just to bring back the Ido Portal method. There was a guy, one of his intense trainees and guys who was really, really into it. He sort of took this approach where he did a lot of crawling. He did a lot of articulations in the spiraling. It was specifically spiral patterns. Yep. Where he was doing like thousands and thousands of spirals and crawling patterns, and then he was hanging from a bar for a bit, and he managed to, like, this guy I think he tore his pec or something. Like he tore something very intensely, and you know, was doing complex gymnastics, and then eventually just, you know, again regained his ability to do these complex movements by regressing to simple spiral patterns.
So I think that's.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that crawling is not as ridiculous as it sounds. Even in mainstream rehab, physio, DNS, dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, is a staple in physio, chiro, sports med. It's very highly looked upon, and it's based upon crawling patterns. This is not something new. Did they know they were using the spinal engine when they were doing it? I don't know, right? Like, I don't know if they know that that's what's happening, okay? But basically, when you're crawling and you crawl like a baby, you're rehabbing your body. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing. It's basically, when you're young, when you're an infant, you're crawling. In the middle, you're standing. You want to respect the same type of motions. And then when you're old again, start crawling again, right? So start of life and end of life are usually crawling.
And that's, you know, the goal, guys, when we're talking about all this, we start on the ground and we start crawling, but the goal is to maintain those good biomechanics that we had when we were crawling as babies, right until we're crawling into our deathbeds, right? Like, we want to be able to walk with good locomotive patterns, with a good free spine, with good healthy joints, all the way until we're into our old age and ready to die. And that's fundamentally, you know, when we talked about goals, and we talked about, you know, reconsidering and redefining a map of movement, recontextualizing what your body means and what movement means and what training means. It's with this goal in mind, right? So if you're listening to this and your goals have been, you know, you want the 6-pack, you want the huge muscles, you want to have the 400-pound deadlift or the 500-pound squat or whatever it is, right? We're trying to recontextualize in a new lens of we're even presenting a new goal for you, where your goal is going to be pain-free, good movement right up until the day that you die of natural causes in old age. And that's, you know, that's for me, that's been the biggest paradigm shift that I've kind of had.
Were you going to screen share something?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm going to screen share something, and kind of within the same topic of the shoulder, we can't forget what happens when you run or jog. Right? So I look at the shoulder blade itself as an engine. Okay? It's helping me out as I move. If you watch me, I'm going to give an example here, so you can see me. Basically, I'm going to show what the spinal engine looks like. My shoulders are coming up. From the side, you'll see it pop up, then come down. Pop up, and I use that momentum with my hand to help out what happens at the shoulder. Okay? I'm going to show a clip of Usain Bolt doing the same thing. He's using his shoulders as the elastic properties and the tensions. He's timing it correctly to where he can snap it back down and use it as an engine to propel his motion. And it counts on that final engine and side-to-side lean. It does not make sense in a, what's it called? Brace the core model, a tight core. Okay, so let's take a look at that here. All right, so what you're seeing is Usain Bolt from the side, and you're gonna watch his shoulder. If you see my cursor here, watch his shoulder there. Yep. It'll pop up and down as he's going. It's gonna pop up there. He's gonna punch down. It's gonna pop up. He's gonna punch down again. Pop up, punch down. At that point, right
there's
here,
almost an elastic recoil, right? When his elbow comes up behind him, that elastic recoil, and he drives that elastic recoil forward too, right? So that's interesting.
So what he just did was he side bent. Then he timed the side bend to his foot landing on the ground, and he accelerates his arm down or back, depending on where he is, and that pops the shoulder up. And you don't need any extra force on your body when this is happening. You just let the soft tissues ride up. Then when they get to their highest point, they will come down naturally. And that's when you accelerate them back down. So you're going to see a chopping motion from his hand right now, and his shoulder's going to come down and boom, okay? Chop down, pops up. Chop down, pops up. He's not holding tense at that point, okay? So in that way, your shoulders are an engine helping they're not the primary engine, but they're a very important engine. They're driving your motion back and forth.
Yeah.
When you're walking, obviously it's not going to be a huge. When you're sprinting, you can either keep yourself tight like this, which is
Yeah.
what's going to happen if you train that way in the gym. Okay. If you train to be tight like this, you're going to run like this. Maybe I can run like this with a big engine and still be fast, but it's not going to be that smooth motion from side to side. You're not going to be able to pivot, turn, three-dimensional motions, use your shoulder to outlet energy to turn the corner. You're not going to be able to do any of those things. You'll be able to sprint fast, straight line. It really does show the shoulder is an engine for locomotion. That is its locomotive primary function, okay, to be an engine. Okay, even when you're walking, try walking with your hands over your head or not using your hands at all. It's not going to feel good, right? You're going to want the natural arm swing. You see arm swing everywhere, okay? That is your engine idling, okay? You're not.
You can even see the rigidity of the shoulder girdle of the racers that he was beating. They were a lot more rigid and a lot more, stiff through the upper body, through the shoulders. Their arms were still pumping, but it looked almost like a little more robotic, whereas his was like a little more fluid. You saw the elastic recoil where theirs was almost, again, it's this model of your engine comes from how much force you can produce by actively contracting the muscles. They were pumping their arms like these mechanically driven pistons, which again is the current model of everything is rigid and you're just driving with as much horsepower as you can, versus he had this efficient transference of energy, and he's using that recoil and the elasticity in his joints to pump. Like,
we'll do a specific episode on that in itself because it's very, very interesting. But I'm gonna share the screen again and show you the other athletes, even though they're tense as can be, and they've probably been trained into that, their engines are still going. Let me show you here. Okay, so you can stop it from happening and you can muscle your way through it, but it's still going to happen. So I'm going to slow this down to 0.25 because these guys are really, really fast. And we'll watch Justin Gatlin here, okay? Yeah. This guy's known for having a stiff core, okay? Like, he has very stiff core. He's a traditional runner in that he's been taught to brace the core and people praise him for it, right? But watch his shoulders. It still moves up and down. There it's moving up, and there it's moving up. See that? Like, it's still up high. It's still coming up. But my prediction is if he let that go a little more naturally, he would be able to get more power out of that. Okay, like Usain Bolt.
But even I was going to say, like, comparing him to Usain Bolt, even though his shoulder comes up, he doesn't have that same bounce. He doesn't have that same elastic recoil, right? And that's wasted for me. That's wasted energy, right? Like, if you're not making use of the elastic recoil of your joints because you're too busy flexing them, then you're just losing out on potential energy and output. And I found that really interesting. And for guys, if you wanted to look at like a full episode of what we're talking about when we're saying like fluid movement through the spine, our last episode number 3 of The Art of Move, was all about the spinal engine. And we talked about the rotation and fluidity through the spine as a primary driver of movement. And we talk about that extensively.
Absolutely. NoFilter.net if you want to see the replays. I highly recommend going to NoFilter.net and watching the video so you can really understand what we're talking about. You will get a great experience on Spotify, but No Filter is the way to go. These videos are archived. So watch again, Mustafa Powell in the front here. I think that's who it is. Again, the shoulder popping up. See that? This is actually a very good example of somebody he's relatively stiff, and you can still see those shoulders working.
Oh yeah, okay. So much movement through the whole, like, not just the ball and socket, but the scapula as well. It's a really, really good example.
Absolutely. A lot of these are, look at this guy right here. I'm not sure who that is, but he's got a great boom. His shoulders come up. Again, 100 meters, you'll see this a little bit less. You're going to see this more in sports where you have to cut, like football, okay? Because you need that momentum from your shoulders to be able to dip from side to side, okay? I want the shoulder to be elastic, and I want to whip it down. I don't want to be so tense. That's my assertion there. And that's how to work with the natural mechanism of your spine to move back and forth. And that's how you transfer power through your shoulder efficiently and pain-free. Learn to move around the corner if this is nowhere to be found.
Yeah. So, and that's, this is a really, we kind of set out today to talk a little bit more about the shoulders. And if we wanted to kind of sum it up, the shoulder is more than just a ball and socket joint. It's more than just your shoulder blades. And it's more than just, like a press or a lateral raise or, a bench. It has this naturally rotating element to it. When you throw a punch, if you throw a punch out in front of you, your wrist naturally turns in. If you throw an uppercut, your wrist naturally turns out. You have that external rotation of the shoulder that naturally happens, right? And when you throw a punch too, your scapula is moving, your thoracic spine is moving. There's movement through the hips. There is a ton of movement through the whole body in association with movement through the shoulder joint. And again, we're taking the model of isolating joints where, maybe with bodybuilding, you would be doing presses and lateral raises. With the FRC, the functional range conditioning, you'd be articulating the joint through the full range of movement. With the art of move approach and with, movement systems like functional patterns or GOTA or some more progressive idea trainers and physiotherapists who are looking at the human body as more of an integrated system as opposed to a collection of parts, that movement has to happen through multiple joints, right? It like when you are moving your shoulder, you're not just moving your shoulder, you're moving your scapula, you're moving your spine, you're moving your hips. And to start thinking about the way that the body is supposed to move as you're training these joints, this is the paradigm shift that we kind of want to try to introduce to you. So over the last 3 episodes, we started from the foot, and I'd highly recommend going through and listening back to these episodes. If you haven't heard the first 3 episodes, the first episode was defining functional fitness. The second one was talking about the foot all the way up to the hip and kind of the function and the patterns that it's supposed to kind of go for. The third episode was the spinal engine, which was kind of when we were just watching those sprinters, we could we do a little bit of spinal movement, and then, well, not a little bit, we do, like, the spinal movement is basically the prime driver of forward movement. And today we kind of talked about the shoulder joint, but I hope that the big picture of everything that you're listening to right now is that rather than going by a joint approach or thinking about the body as a collection of parts, is that we are an integrated unit, and movement is the most important element of how you should be thinking about your training. How should you move? And these episodes are recorded on No Filter Network, which is nofilter.net. These episodes are recorded live, and we try to schedule them out as long out in advance as possible, so that you can come join them. And what's cool about No Filter is that you can watch live and you can ask us questions in the live chat. You can use the knock feature to come join yourself. So if you wanted Will and I to look at your movement and we could kind of analyze you in person, you could send us video clips, you could send us URLs with video of yourself moving in your sport, and we could actually do a live breakdown of what you're doing and how you could optimize it even more. If you're listening to this on Spotify and you want to see the video replays, you can go to nofilter.net. You can find me. My name is Anthony Manuel, and you can look at the videos in my vault. Will, did you want to start uploading these videos to YouTube as well?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. Maybe even do some, put some videos over top to make it a little bit more visual.
Gotcha.
Examples that I can, don't have to pick out on the fly. And yeah, this is great stuff. Great questions. Awesome hosting. Yeah, don't sell yourself out short, because you are, I would say, in terms of fitness and movement and understanding that world, you are ahead of 99.9% of therapists out there, because they are on the wrong map. This is my assertion. You might not like me for it. Doesn't matter. You're on the wrong map. And if you want longevity, you got to get on the right map. You got to respect the motions. You got to respect what you see in slow motion. Now, we can debate what we're seeing in slow motion, but and the consequences of such, but are you even looking at slow motion? That's the key. Are you looking at injuries on a daily basis? Are you looking at movement behaviors to the T? If you're not, I would suggest starting, getting Coach's Eye, putting videos into Coach's Eye, and just don't worry about what I'm saying. Just watch the videos, okay? And start to see things, patterns. If you, I've told you about the bow. I've told you about landing on the inside or outside of your foot. I've told you about having your head over your foot. See if the videos that you're watching in slow motion are respecting those motions. Maybe you have another reason for it. Maybe you're a therapist or a fitness expert. And I'm going to ruffle some feathers with this information because it goes against a lot of the ingrained theory. So please, questions, debates, anything you want to, dialogue with, please come at me with it. Love it. And
yeah, like if you guys are listening to this and you're like, that's fucking stupid. Like if you're listening and you're triggered and you're literally like, no, that's fucking stupid. They're wrong. We want to know, this, like the point of this podcast is to explore truth in movement. So if you think that something that we're saying is false, come on nofilter.net and join the stream and tell us why you think we're wrong. And we will explain why we think we're right, and we can have a discussion about it, right? That's the cool thing about a platform like this, is we're not just sharing information for the sake of being like, we're right, no one else is right. Like, we want to have discussions about this, right? So anyone who's like, no, that's fucking stupid, come tell us why we're fucking stupid on the next stream, okay? That, like, seriously. And that's like ultimately what this is all about, guys. This is a movement towards truth, right? And I use the word movement unironically. We're trying to move towards deeper truth. And that's, I love the invitation for people to start looking at slow motion video. One thing that I want to say, one of my favorite sayings, one of my favorite isms, is the map is not the territory, right? So even as we're talking about these concepts, we can talk about the idea of an inside ankle bone high and bowing and cornering and all this stuff. Those are maps, but until you start applying them to your movement, they don't mean anything, right? So the map is not the territory. Now, the issue is, if you're using the wrong map, that's even worse, right? The map is not the territory, but you at least have to use the right map. So when we say we're trying to figure out the right map for human movement, I think what we're going to do next episode maybe is we're going to define more in clear terms, because we use the term map a lot. We're going to define the current map and the current model of what's being used in terms of physiotherapy and popular training, and we're going to define in the most simple terms the map that we're operating on, and hopefully that defines more clarity. So my name is Anthony Manuel. We recorded this live on nofilter.net. Go to nofilter.net to go see interactive live streams by myself and Dr. Will. There's also a ton of other amazing hosts on there, and the platform is open for anyone who wants to use podcasts, who want to do live streams, who want to have their own show. It's an amazing platform because you can record it live, you can have the interactive features, you can charge ticket prices, you can create paid subscriptions, you can let live tips. There's all kinds of ways to monetize content. It's an amazing platform. Come check it out. And go to nofilter.net and see when our next stream is live. Come do it interactive. Come join us, show us your movement, show us videos that you find interesting, tell us why we're wrong, and we'll see you on the next episode where we're going to more clearly define the map of movement. Sweet.
And it is that, are we live or no?
No.
Okay, so there's a trust that happens when you go to school. You trust that Harvard has the best information for you and that there's no better information out there. The PhDs have the best information available. And the system of having science validate at each step, peer review process, ensures that you as the student are learning the best information. You forgot the slow-mo though. You didn't watch enough slow motion. You were theoretically giving me the best information, pontificating from the top. And the great thing is that now people will be able to get this with the scientific consensus or not. People will be able to look at it themselves and say, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be looking for. Okay, great. I can try to practice this myself and see if it makes sense. If it doesn't, I can scrap it and then move on. Right? Yeah. So it gives the power back to the person on the ground, the therapist, the personal trainer who doesn't get results in terms of like longevity with the current models. that are literally based off cadaver science. It's true. It's a theoretical on top of theoretical on top of theoretical approach that is like Joel Seedman being 90 degrees is the best. So I'm only going to do 90 degree. You are relying on papers that are comparing one thing to the other, 90 degrees versus full, but you're not even looking at the specific joint in slow motion. So what are you doing? You're hoping that, hoping that your NFL athletes will make you look good. It's like, because this already athlete has come into me and he's already in the NFL or in college, I give him some exercises and that will probably be detrimental to him, but you'll never know because there's so many confounding variables that it's lost, and I have complete liabilities gone for me because there are too many variables. The turf is really, really tough out there these days on ankles and knees and all that, 90 degrees is the safe zone, according to my papers. So let's stay in 90 degrees and we'll code athletes like that. Except that you forgot about tension, you forgot about the nervous system, you forgot about rotations that happen, no matter if you want them to or not, around your hips and your shoulders and your spine. All that is neglected for tension because some paper told them. So, it's like, it's insanity, literal insanity.
Well, and that's why we're doing this podcast, right?
For sure.